Hi, Dr. Nina. Or you rather be going by Dr. Lum, right?
Yeah, Dr. Lum is fine. You can call me Nina, whatever.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming to talk to us today. I really appreciate that. And I've been looking at your page and I'm like, whoa, you have so much content.
Yeah.
So much content. So who is Dr. Nina Lum, if I may ask?
Well, depends on who you ask. So,
You get to choose. It's all about what you decide to share, so don't worry about it.
yeah, so I'm actually, a lot of my friends know me as Nina Ngwa.
Okay.
As you probably know, Lum is not a last name in Cameroon. It's a first name or middle name. So I am from Douala. I was born and raised in Douala, but my origins obviously is in the northwest region of Cameroon. And I live in the state of Kentucky right now. I consider myself a very energetic, goal-driven encourager. I like to help people feel better about themselves.
Okay. And so your page, it's about IMG.
Yes, so that usually is a point of contention because a lot of people send me a message like, I always see you talking about IMGs. What does that mean? Like, who's an IMG? What's an IMG? So, IMG is an acronym that stands for International Medical Graduate.
Okay.
And really, what that is,
I did a research trying to get it. Like I had all kind of acronym on IMG. I'm like, that can be this. Next. It can't be that. Okay.
yeah, because if you look up IMG, you probably find things like IMG, like the modeling agency and stuff. But it's an acronym that's known in the medical world, and it's usually short for International Medical Graduate. And that is anyone that comes into the United States and Canada, really, that is a physician or a medical student from another school outside of the United States. So if you are a foreigner that went to medical school in another country and you're coming into the States to transition for whatever reasons, maybe to be reunited with your family, or maybe just for better opportunity, or maybe because you want to practice here, you are considered an international medical graduate. So I am one of those people. I fit the criteria for it. And so based on my life journey and struggles, I decided to start blogging to help other people that fall under that category.
That's actually amazing because I have nothing to do with the medical field. But going by your little tips, I feel like I'm getting it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive because, like I said, I'm considered zero as far as medical is concerned. Like I
Right.
know nothing about the medical field apart besides, you got to go to medical school, blah, blah. That's it.
Yeah.
And I looked at your page and I was like, hold on, okay. I actually started making sense of it. It's like I understand what journey you need to take.
Yes.
But what journey did you take? Like, where did your journey start?
Yes, that's a good question, Liz. So, wow. My journey obviously started in Douala in Cameroon.
Okay.
That's where I was born. That's where I was raised. I did all our elementary school work, so primary school work there. I went to boarding school in Cameroon in Limbe, Sika Baptist College. So a lot of people that are in the States, there are a lot of alumni here. And then from there, I went into, actually, I took the exam for what we used to call CUSE back in the day. It was the only medical faculty in the country when I was graduating high school, when I graduated high school. And so I took that exam as an entrance exam to go to medical school in Cameroon, and I failed. And that was a very humbling moment for me because, I mean, obviously a lot of people failed that exam for so many reasons. Some believe they failed, some believe they did not fail, and they just weren't chosen. I don't know what category I fell under, but not getting into medical school then was like one of the biggest blows in my life. I think that was probably the first time I felt failure and that I felt rejection. And so I went into the University of Boya at the time and started studying in the Department of Life Sciences. So I started studying microbiology as an alternative to medicine. And I was very unhappy and I felt very unfulfilled. I felt like I wasn't walking in my purpose. A lot of my classmates that are here know from like, I don't even know, probably high school. I always was one of those people that talked about being a doctor. And just being a UB, we used to call it UB, was not my purpose. It was not my calling. So I decided to start looking abroad.
Okay.
And like every Anglophone Cameroonian, when it comes to looking abroad, you start looking at the United Kingdom or the United States. I looked at Nigeria, I looked at South Africa, I looked at Italy, actually, for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And there was a lady in Limbe who I took Italian lessons with just to go study medicine in Italy. So thankfully, all that didn't work out. And I found myself in the Caribbean. So I transferred from University of Buea to pre-medicine in the Caribbean.
Okay.
And that's really where it started. And from being in the Caribbean and studying pre-med in the Caribbean, I met a lot of United States citizens that had moved to the Caribbean for medical school. And so they started telling me why they moved and how this was a channel for them to go back to their country to practice medicine. And that's really where my eyes were like opened to this pathway. And I finished pre-med there and started medical school there and completed medical school here by virtue of attending what we call the Caribbean Medical School, which are the schools that are hybrid systems that have a 2-year curriculum on the island and a 2-year curriculum at United States hospitals. So that's really how I came to the US, was by what one may think is chance, but I think it was mostly God's divine will. But it was through meeting other United States citizens that were on the islands that were doing this they had a plan when they came. I did not. I just came because I couldn't get into school in Cameroon. And yeah, that's really how it started. But there's a lot more to that, right? Like that story, I've truncated it and made it sound like it was 5 minutes, but that was a greater part of my life. There was so much rejection. Even how I stumbled onto the Caribbean option was honestly, I think it was God's divine will because it was by chance. It was after meeting rejection upon rejection. Like I applied to so many schools, Liz. I can't even think of how many. And it was just, either I got rejected by the school or I got rejected at the point of travel, and encountering roadblocks, like even trying to come into the States. Like, for example, when I first started the journey, I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the United States and study, like go in as an undergraduate student and study and then apply into medical school. And I got like admissions and paid tuition. I remember I was set on going to Temple University in Philadelphia to start as a pre-pharmacy student. I don't know why. It was like the only thing that I could get into, I guess.
Wow.
And getting to the embassy like 3 times and getting rejected for a student visa and thinking, oh my gosh, well, that's not the path for me. I looked at Nigeria. There was a medical school in Ibadan. I applied there. That was going well. At the same time, I was doing my Italian lessons. Like my hand was in too many pots.
Knocking doors all over the place.
Yes, I was like hustling everywhere, like, okay, how we say you hustle until it's done, right? Like you just keep pushing until something comes out. Yeah.
Oh my days. Like, would you say it took you years to finally get one door to open up?
Oh yeah. Liz. Like it was like, a window would open and then I'll go into that window and then look for the door and then, take the next step. So to be honest, I had no clue that I would be here, like practicing in the States. That was never really like my primary intention. Obviously, like I said, my intention was to study at CHU in Yaoundé and then, maybe stay in the country or whatever. My mom practices there. So it was like, I would have a job if I practiced in Cameroon or train in Cameroon. But it took years, Liz, because when you experience failure or rejection one time, especially when you're young, you can very easily internalize it and think that that's what life is going to be for you. And then you don't realize that that's just like something that everybody experiences and it doesn't have to define who you are. So as a young person, so obviously I finished high school at 16, like many of us, we finished high school a little bit earlier, and experiencing failure at that age to get into medical school, I didn't register that maybe I wasn't prepared or maybe it wasn't the right time or maybe it was still going to happen at another time through another channel. That's not how my mind worked. Experiencing failure then just meant to me that it wasn't meant for me. And it became sort of a definition of who I was as opposed to just something that I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And being that young and not having the benefit of like, psychology or psychotherapy or knowing or other women or men that can speak into my life and tell me, hey, that's normal. That's something you experience. And even sometimes in our culture, people tell you that, but they don't know how to say it. And so they're just like, it'll work. Like, try something else. They just brush it off. But that's their way of expressing that it's normal what you're experiencing. So at that age, it felt like it was never going to happen. And so to answer your question, it took years, and it took just knocking on several different kinds of doors to finally on this one day fall on this pre-medicine school in the Caribbean. Yeah.
So I was about to ask you if somebody in your family is a doctor, and you just gave it up just like that. So your mom is a doctor.
Yes. Yeah. So my mom is a pediatrician, and that's obviously a doctor for children. And I grew up with my mom, obviously, as the primary person that I looked up to as to the kind of work that being a physician or the kind of things that being a physician meant. Like that was my definition of being a doctor, was seeing what she did and then seeing what her friends did, because obviously she had a lot of colleagues and both male and female who are in the medical field, and we were surrounded by that. So seeing their lifestyle, their work ethic, the influence that they had in our small community was sort of like my first inspiration for pursuing this career.
So are you a pediatrician, or do you have any specialty right now?
Yes, I do. So my code here says hospitalist, but I'm trained in family medicine, which is general primary care. And I currently practice in an inpatient setting. So that is inpatient primary care, where I only take care of adults from 18 and over who are admitted to the hospital.
So I could be your patient, basically.
Yes. Unfortunately, I hope you never have to be my patient. But if you're admitted to a hospital and need a primary care doctor, yes, that would be me.
I kind of like my doctor, though. Call me crazy. And I go there and just a little talk with them sometime. Like, just a little something. And I'm like, well, they have credit. They say, oh, we have a credit for you. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I might as well just use it.
Right.
I'm crazy like that. Sorry. I like my doctor.
Why do you like your doctor?
Well, I like my doctor because, first of all, they're pretty honest. I have that feeling that they don't just give me medication for the sake of, prescribing it. I have a doctor that would rather let you try something natural before writing a prescription, because I'm not a medication person, first of all. I don't like medication. And secondly, my doctor is pretty nice. Like, we talk about almost different things. Like, she relates to me on things that, everyday life problems. Oh, you got kids. I got kids too. And before we know it, we're exchanging notes, and be like, oh, my days. It kind of get out of the we're kind of friends now, though we don't go out for drinks or whatever.
Yeah.
I just like the way I feel when I'm there and the way I'm treated. Like, I don't feel like just a patient or
That's
just
good.
a witness,
Yeah.
It makes it easier for me.
Right. So you have trust in your relationship with your doctor. Yeah.
And I think it's very important. So that's why I really don't mind going there and they tell me, oh, you have nothing, you're fine. And I'm like, oh, wow. It's never a waste to come and say hello,
Yeah. I agree. 100%.
Yeah, so I kind of like that. Would you say that the health industry is one of those led by men, like dominated by males still? Because a lot of the talk I've been having with different female is a lot of industries, even nowadays, are still kind of linked to men. They assume the best chef, the best cook is a male. The best this has to be a male. Do you have that feeling in your workplace, or do you feel like women have an opening and the respect that they actually deserve because they also have the brain and they can do the job?
That's a good thing to bring up, Liz. So statistically, yes, there are more men in the medical field than there are women. Okay. But I believe over the last 5 years, we've had more, or I think it was over the last 5 years where the number of women matriculating into United States medical schools is just about evened out to the male counterparts and matriculating into United States medical schools. So in the future, I see more of sort of a more balanced out equation there. But right now, there are definitely still more men than women in medicine. And let me just start by saying that let that not faze anyone that's listening to this or watching this. It doesn't matter. Because if a woman wants to pursue, like, we live in such a great time that if a woman wants to pursue about anything, they can.
Yeah.
And even though maybe historically it has been that maybe there are more men in the discipline than women, like I said, what we're seeing in the medical schools now, it's changing. And so this is the prime time for any woman who has any interest in a health field or any interest in a field that has previously been dominated by men to take their seat at the table, so to speak. And now even within medicine, when you break it down into different compartments, so you can break it down by specialty, you can break it down by racial or ethnic backgrounds, and you bring it down to how many or what's the percentage of female physicians that are of African descent versus, or I should say, Black female physicians versus non-Black, then you come into a really small percentage. I believe it's quoted to be anywhere from 2 to 5% of physicians.
Oh, wow.
So, and if you also break that down by specialty, you find that the longer or what is considered more demanding specialties maybe have an even smaller percentage of women, and then an even smaller percentage of ethnic minorities.
Wow.
And that there are various reasons why that happens. In my opinion, there's my opinion and then there's fact, right? In my opinion, I think that primarily there is a lack of leadership from ethnic minorities for women of those same groups to look up to as a means to an end. So because there is that lack of representation and leadership from people that we would naturally be gravitating toward, then we're seeing that there's fewer and fewer of us enrolling into those departments. And then there is also socioeconomic factors, like, the cost of pursuing education. And then there is, obviously things that are beyond our control. So I'm focusing on what's within our control. And then, depending on who you speak with, you'll learn about, and for those of us that are, for myself, coming in as a foreigner, then you learn about, is there discrimination in the system? Well, depending on who you speak to, you hear different opinions on that. But that being said, I do not want any woman that's listening to this to feel like if there is something that they want to pursue, they cannot pursue it because of their sex. Because to me, that is the most ludicrous thing in 2021. If there is a goal or a passion in your heart that you want to pursue, don't let what you think or what other people's definition of what you should be doing define your path. Because we're just not in that time and space anymore. And we have everything is aligning in our favor at this point to go take the seat at the table.
Well, America just got their first female VP, so
right, yes,
Black and half Asian. Come on,
right?
Yeah,
it doesn't get any more. It doesn't get any better than that. Well, it can get better than that. But
we got what's the name of the lady that just got nominated as well? The Nigerian lady. She got a high ranking in one of those. I just forgot her name. She's been on the news lately. So she's a Nigerian. Yet she's heading one of those UN company. UN.
Oh yes. I've the Economic Council or something related. Yeah. I remember that. I read a little bit about her, but I don't remember her name.
Representation now,
Yes.
A lot more representation of those examples and goals, people to kind of look up to.
Yes.
You'll be surprised. You might be one of them, though. You may be one of the most popular. No, that's what I keep telling people. I'm trying to tell myself and my mates, my friends, and any woman that wants to listen to me, that it doesn't need to be the world. You could be an inspiration for whoever is looking at you right now. Like I'm looking at you, you look so good. You're a doctor. People will just look at the glam and they will think that, oh my days, I want to become a doctor. You know, that's the first thing that somebody would think of is that, oh my God, she looks good, she speaks good, she does this, she's smart, I want to be like her. Then they will start doing their homework to see, okay, how do I get to that level? And they will see all the hustle, all the tough work that is involved, because sometimes people don't look at that. They don't see that. You know, just see what their eyes can see. The rest comes after. So when you see, what would you tell a young girl that is looking at you right now? Because you told them, don't stop. You know, go for what you want to be because you can do it. But what else would you say when they look at you or another woman, for example, if I decide that I want to become a doctor, do I have chances? How long is medical school? Because a lot of us will be like, man, I don't have time. Like, 6 years, oh my days, I don't have that time. I'm already old. What would you have to say to women like that or to young girls that would think that is too long?
Yeah, that's a good question because I mentor a lot of international medical graduates, and then some of them I actually coach on one of my coaching platforms. And that's a frequently asked question. And I think that one of the reasons it's a frequently asked question to me is because I'm not married. And for the longest time, I have been single. And very recently, I became engaged to a phenomenal man that I'm excited to eventually marry. Yeah, thank you. But I think that I was able to attract women like who you describe because of my personal history. And so one of the things that I would say is stop counting your ovaries. Like, okay. And I know that's controversial because some of us have a desire to want to have kids, and there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a mother. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a mother and a homemaker. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, to that same effect, there's nothing wrong with wanting a career. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a career in your 30s, in your 40s, after you've already become a mother and a homemaker. There's nothing wrong with wanting both of those things together. And one of the great things that I like about being in medicine is that I've met so many women that I look up to who are both mothers, who are leaders, and at the same time have even more demanding responsibilities at their workplace as a physician. And so I think the deception that has been sold to many women, especially to women of our origin, and I say our origin because we're both Cameroonian and we're both African, we're both immigrants, and we know our culture better than we can describe it, right? And there is a philosophy that has been fed to us that there's an age that is too old for anything. And there's a philosophy in our community that says, you know, at a certain age, you should have already done this. There's a checkbox that you should have already checked. There is an imaginary list, right? That we should have already met these things by 30, married, kids, by 40, this, that, by 50, this, that. And then there are certain things that are no longer on the list when you get to a certain age. Like if you've already reached your mid-30s and you don't have a career, well, you're too old to go for it, right? If you're in your 30s and you're not married and don't have kids, well, you know, you're screwed, right? And so I think it's important that women, we step back and ask ourselves, who are we living for? Like in my opinion, you're not even living for your spouse. You're not even living for your kids. Like, yeah, you're living for yourself. And your spouse and your kids are great additions to your life and they're great blessings. Let's not discount that. But who are you living for? Are you living for yourself and for your creator? Or are you living for other people? And when we start to look at things like that, then whatever you do is on your timeline. Like if you decide to have a career in your 40s, that's because you chose to, and that's totally fine. I think we're so focused on everybody else's definition of our lives that we're not focused on our definition of our lives. Because if you're living for yourself, you'll be more focused on when and if you'll be more focused on if you achieve whatever you set for yourself to do. And if you're meeting your own given purpose on earth, then you will be focused on what other people define your targets and purpose to be. So to that point, if you're a woman and you want certain things in your life that you're not seeing right now, it is 100% up to you to manifest those things. It's not dependent on somebody else or culture or definitions and age limits. There is no such thing as too old to do the things you want to do. It just doesn't make any sense, because to me, I'm living for primarily my creator and then for myself. And the other things are just additions to that. And so when I do that, if I have a goal, it doesn't matter if I'm 50 before I accomplish it. The most important thing is that I did what I came on earth to do. And there should not be an age limit to that. There should not be a target to it. That being said, there is, biologically, we're all going to hit menopause at some day. And so if children is within your purpose or what you define as an accomplished life, then yes, there is a season where you're more likely to achieve those things. And if you want to prioritize that during that season, that's totally fine also. But then once you're done with that, you can still go back to your career, or vice versa. You can start with your career and then pursue the biological part afterwards. It may be more difficult, but there's other ways to have children now. So I just think that we should remove the labels and limits and really focus on what we truly internally want and what we truly internally are brought here for and how to meet those goals, as opposed to being focused on other people's definitions and timelines and checklists and all these other things.
I hear you, and this speaks to me so much, because I'm thinking right now, people may watch us and think, they're in America. That's why they speak like that,
Yeah.
So when you compare yourself, for example, we have doctors, you might have friends or maybe family in Cameroon who are also doctors. When you compare yourself to your fellow female doctor in Cameroon, would you say that they are constrained in a box, as in, or would you think that they are free? Because like you described, our society, especially our African and Cameroonian community, tend to have a checklist for us. That's why they agree what is right according to their standards and what is wrong. If you have a child and you're not married, oh my gosh, it's like you break loose. If you're not married by 40, your mother is dead. She's like,
yeah.
Child is not married.
Yes, there's no hope.
Morning, evening, and afternoon. If while we would think, I'd rather be single than have a bad companion, I don't want a headache.
Right.
I'm building my career. When you think about all those barriers, all those cultural beliefs, because I call them cultural beliefs, to me, that's what they are. And I'm saying it, I'm a grounded African, like I grew up there. I had my mother talking to me about it. I'm even talking to my daughter about body changes.
Yeah.
And I definitely won't use my mom's style.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
When you think about it, do you think that there's such a big difference between you, a Cameroonian descendant, practicing as a doctor in the United States, versus them? You have prestige. Look at us. We respect you so much.
Yeah, if you say so.
How is it there?
Yeah.
Also, it's supposed to be a prestigious a job, In Africa, if your child is a painter, they will be like, jobless. You want it to be lawyer, doctor, engineer, So technically, it's prestigious almost everywhere you go.
Right.
What difference would you say there are between you working here and you and the one working in Cameroon, in terms of opportunities, in terms of functioning, infrastructure?
Yeah. So that's a very complex question, Liz, because I have the perspective of, I've worked in Cameroon on like a voluntary basis, very short term. So it doesn't really compare with somebody that works there full time.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother still works there full time. So I know from her experience some of what it takes to be a physician in Cameroon. And then based on my limited experience of also serving at different facilities in Cameroon for very short periods. And so, first of all, I want to say that we have a very rich culture. We have a very, I actually really like a lot of things about our Cameroonian culture. I really do. I think it comes from a good place, Liz.
It does. I agree.
It comes from a good place. Because we cherish things like community, we cherish family, we cherish taking care of one another. And our definition of family is very loose. Like even just being on this call right now, I'll call you my sister easily. It doesn't take me, I don't have to think about it, right? It's like we know we have that innate sense of connection. Mm-hmm. And really, when I think about life, I think that is the foundation of life. And we lose that sometimes with adopting a Western culture, right? And it has its perks. It has ups and downs. The downs are when you start getting the MoneyGram request and the Western Union request, right?
They never fail.
It never fails, never stops. But but we're given the opportunity to bless others, so we have to also consider that. Now, that being said, I think that our culture comes from a good place when it encourages us to have children early or to prioritize family. But I feel like the delivery is what has become toxic. Mm. The delivery it's become a binary thing where it's either or. Mm. There is no room for combining those things and saying, if it's late, it's still fine, right? The most important thing is that you get there. So, in comparing both situations, I'll break it down in different parts. So we've talked about the culture aspects, the advantages of a Cameroonian culture, and the things that we should all cherish, that our culture has gifted us. And then I'll move into now the differences between practicing medicine here and practicing medicine in Cameroon. The difference to me primarily is based on the outcome. I feel like the outcomes are way better here because we have more infrastructure, we have a lot more knowledge, we have a lot more science at our fingertips. And so you can help patients a lot easier here compared to Cameroon. Second, we have more options for treatment. We have more subspecialized care, more access to care than we do in Cameroon. So in a sense, practicing medicine in the States is a lot easier to me than practicing in Cameroon. When I went to Cameroon to work, it was a challenge because I didn't have the things that I usually have here at my fingertips. Here you want to do something, you just have every equipment you need at bedside within seconds. And if there is a lack of equipment, you can escalate for somebody to get you that equipment ASAP. In Cameroon, it's different. When a patient comes into the hospital, they have to go buy their own saline. They have to pay for every medication. It's payment before service, right? Here it's service before payment. And so that allows for more people to be able to present and get the care that they need. So that's why I think medicine is easier to practice here than it is in Cameroon. But that being said, I think it also highlights the point where those of us that are here, we've identified an easier way to practice medicine. It's up to us to facilitate that healthcare delivery in Cameroon. It's up to us to take what we're learning here back home and help build up our system. Now, some people will say Cameroon doesn't want to be helped and all this, there's so many opinions around that. It's a different country. Don't think that what you have in the West is better. And so automatically you can come and change everything because you're coming from the West. And other people will realize that there is a deficiency in the knowledge base that we have in Cameroon. There is a deficiency in the infrastructure, and maybe an exchange of information, an exchange of education, an exchange of opportunity is actually going to benefit both places. Because there are things that we're really good at. We're really good at treating certain infectious diseases there that are not present here. Mm-hmm. We're really good at, maybe managing the complications of diseases like HIV that maybe you don't see here. But there are also certain treatment options that are available here that are not yet available there. So there is an opportunity for exchange. Mm-hmm. And I wish and hope that we could be more open from both ends, from our end here, giving, and then from the end in Cameroon, also receiving from them what they're experts in and what we are experts at. And so I wish there was more opportunity for exchange of information, exchange of equipment, infrastructure, education, and knowledge between both societies. And then I think so that's on the, difference in medical practice. And then on the difference in maybe just the personal well-being, obviously practicing here offers just a lot more benefits to me personally. I think I've enjoyed more benefits practicing here, but I often live with a lot of guilt also. I live with a lot of guilt along the lines of, um, could this be my country? Could it be any better in Cameroon to where, why isn't this us, right? Like, why isn't Cameroon like this? And that's a question that we can sit here and talk about for hours on end, but that's a small part of guilt that I think I also battle with.
You know what? I would love to see what you just said happening. You just nailed something that, I mean, it's been under our eyes for so long.
Mm-hmm.
We really took the time to realize it. We could have exchange programs,
Mm-hmm.
living here to go in Cameroon for like short-term assignment and back, not
Mm-hmm.
going for like NGO project or whatever.
Yeah.
Actually come and learn something, because there's a lot to learn from them too.
Yeah.
And they too come here and learn something from us here.
From us. Right. There's a lot to learn from both sides. Yeah.
I think it will be so great,
Mm-hmm.
not just even in the ways, because I mean, we're in 2021 and I'm sad to say that, but we still have doctors who talk anyhow to their patient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're about to have birth, they say, why are you screaming like a mad cow? No.
Yeah. Yeah. So the ethics is, that's a big area. Like we can learn, we've learned a lot here about how to treat our patients. I have, and how to treat our patients better than the way that I saw patients were treated back home. And some of that too is the educational gap. Obviously back home, it's the way we speak to one another is very different. It may be considered aggressive in some instances, but culturally we find that to be appropriate, right, in that setting. But then you come here and you're like, man, so that the way that person talked to me was not right. You're like, oh wow, like that's not right.
You tend to go to your doctor more often now.
Yeah, right, exactly, because you like the way your doctor talks to you. So yeah, there's definitely a lot that we can learn on both sides. But then on the flip side, as a doctor, there's sometimes I wish families took care of their sick loved ones like we do back home.
Yeah.
So that's another area that it's been like a kind of mind blowing, how we are so much more involved in the care of our loved ones at home than here. Here it's more an individualistic system. So as a doctor managing that, you kind of navigate that. We'll consider that population health here, like how you manage a patient after they leave the hospital, falls under that population health umbrella here. Back home, the population health umbrella is actually carried out by the family members. And so that's an advantage that we have, and we can create programs around in our country and let that model be transferred to maybe what we consider the West. And that would be a great way for people to look at life a little bit differently. So there's just, several nuances like that there are also advantages there, but, obviously if your life expectancy is short or your outcomes are poor, some of those things don't count or don't matter as much. It's a very complex situation, obviously, but I digress. I'll let you carry on.
No, but you're touching a sensitive point, and we can only live and pray and hope for the best, because I really think that if that can happen, it will be a game changer.
Absolutely, that's yeah.
Talking about it right now, when you think about how things evolve in Cameroon, how Cameroonian have evolved, what they are doing now, especially the one in the medical field, like you doctors, do you think that you are doing something better than the previous generation, or do you think there's still a lot to do? And what is it? What would you do better?
Liz, there's still a lot to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. I agree 100%. I think we haven't scratched the surface. Now, that being said, I'm also a part of an organization called the Association of Cambrian Physicians in America.
Okay.
And it's relatively new. It's probably under 5 years old. And the goal was just what you mentioned, is how could we get together and foster healthcare for Cameroonians in America, for one, right? And then second, how do we stretch ourselves to impact improvement and change in our own country? And through that organization, there are several different outreach programs that have started off fairly recently. And one I'm really, really happy and excited about is a partnership with a Cameroonian-led non-governmental organization out of Cameroon that does outreach health relief programs to, parts of the country that maybe are not frequently taken care of. So it's ASCOVIM, and it's led by Dr. Bwele. He's well known through, I guess, to Cameroonians in the diaspora because he was one of the CNN heroes of health heroes a couple of years ago. But that's just one of the programs that we're a part of. And then we're looking at how to expand health outreach to Cameroon. We did try a pilot project for improving access to care by offering telemedicine services. This was prior to the pandemic. And since the pandemic started, that kind of halted, which is surprising because you would think that would take off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, that's something that that's an organization that I'm proud to be a part of. And I'm hopeful because in the past, there have been organizations that have, that have been born in the United States by, or created in the United States by Cameroonian physicians that maybe just didn't last long. And so this is one of them that I'm really hopeful for. And I'm looking forward to the change that, that we're going to create.
Oh, wow. That's a great idea, I think. And I wish all the industry, if all Cameroonians can get together by industry, this is health we are talking about, right? So health is a matter that concerns everybody, if you ask me, not just doctors.
Yes, absolutely.
While you guys have the expertise, we could funding or making ourselves volunteers for whatever, or help provide material. If I'm working in a lab, for example, all the lab physicians, etc., could help you with samples, material.
Yes, I agree. So I think, I've heard of the Cambrian Professional Society also that has similar goals and objectives, and I'm not a part of it, but I know that that's a great organization that I'm looking forward to a lot of their work. And then I know that there is a nurse anesthetist association, a Cameroonian nurse anesthetist association as well, that we've actually partnered in the past as Cameroon physicians, and they have actually taken off running also. And it would be great, like you said, if, based off of common ground, so whatever commonalities Cameroonians have in the professional space, if we can leverage that and just impact our colleagues, or again, that exchange of information, because it's really not just about us impacting them as much as they impacting us as well. So it's an exchange, in several different disciplines. That would be great. And that could be the future, especially now that we live in a virtual world where a lot of these things you can accomplish a lot now virtually than maybe even just a few years ago. Yeah.
So let's talk about the recent, because before we touch, we close this, we can't close with the doctor without talking about COVID.
Oh my God.
I cannot have a doctor with me without speaking COVID.
Yes.
COVID has been, let me try to put it nicely, a pain in the butt. That's the nicest I could come up with.
Yes.
For all of us in the United States. COVID has been killing us softly, quietly. That's the worst part of it in Cameroon. Why am I saying quietly? Is because although in the US, we're still not like a general consensus of COVID, like you still have people thinking, of COVID as a likely issue. in Cameroon, we seem to have a bigger percentage of people just waving their hands off at COVID. You
Yeah.
know, so what do you have to tell them? As you know, you are from Cameroon. We know our country. We know how things work. As
Hmm.
a doctor now, who is living here in a place that we consider, super developed, high
Hmm.
here. The US is like top notch, if you want to put it that way. You live here. We are still dying here. What are we counting on in Cameroon? What are we doing? What do you want to tell them? Please say something to them, something that maybe their doctor is saying and they may not believe them. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually really personally hurts me to see the impact of COVID on Cameroonians, on everybody, but especially Cameroonians and even here with the larger proportion being on ethnic minorities also. So, and the thing that hurts the most is, sometimes you can, when a problem is based off of external factors, so maybe it's a problem that you didn't have a role to play in, it's easier to blame somebody else. But it's worse when you are the person denying the problem's existence and you are the primary perpetrator in the problem. So when it comes to COVID, huh, I almost feel like some of us in our culture, and I'm speaking to Cameroonians right now,
Mhm.
we've chosen to not learn. We've chosen to be in a perpetual state of denial about a real problem because it makes us feel better that way.
Mm.
So we're refusing to acknowledge the truth because it's more comfortable to do that. Because it's almost as if we face reality, we will crumble under it. And what's the best way to do is escape the truth. But what we're doing when we do that is we're putting ourselves and our loved ones at risk. It is not new that you have a virus that can cause mass illness, especially respiratory illness like this. It's not the first time it's happened in history. It is the first time it's happened in our generation, probably to this scale. So it almost feels as if it's somebody else's problem, or it's fake, or it's a hoax, or it is not real, because we've never experienced something like this. But if we take this problem and we compare with other problems that we are very well familiar with, like malaria, nobody argues about the reality of malaria, because we've seen people die from malaria day in, day out. We've seen people die of HIV and the complications of HIV day in, day out. I don't know one Cameroonian that will argue with me about the reality of the HIV virus, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a novel virus because we're not familiar with it, or because we have never seen a pandemic in our generation. It's easier to deny it because we're not familiar with it, and we don't want to face the truth of dealing with this problem and the magnitude of this problem, especially because it has affected our social lives, it has affected our political environment, it has affected our ability to travel, our ability to do something that we as Cameroonians cherish the most, which is socialization and
Mm.
community. Because it's threatening these four aspects of our lives, our economic lives, our social lives, our personal lives, because it threatens the things that we consider very important. I think a lot of us are taking what we think is the easier way out, coping by telling ourselves it's not real, or ignoring what we should be doing to prevent the spread, or thinking it's a problem of the West, or thinking it's a problem of those who travel, to where it's affecting our communities in Cameroon and we're not even realizing it. And then second, culturally, we have this phenomenal, I don't even know, way of attaching stigma to disease in Cameroon. We have a great way at making somebody who has an illness an outcast, to where when it comes to a disease that is a respiratory illness that is easily transmitted by being in the presence of another sick person, and it requires isolation to prevent transmission. We almost want to equate that again to sort of the stigma that we brought the sort of stigma that we've associated with HIV in our communities. Where I remember there was a time where people wouldn't touch HIV patients because they felt like they'll get the virus.
Yeah.
And so now you're talking about something that if I speak to you, I can transmit it if I was in your presence. So we have a way of creating stigma around this problem to where even when a person has the virus, they don't want to say that they are dealing with this disease because people are going to avoid them. And then our community, we need to also realize that there is an end to it. You can have the virus and clear the virus and not be contagious. But, our community would spread that out to where people are going to avoid you for a whole year. They'll avoid you for an extended period of time. And that makes that person feel isolated, and you're taking away something that's important in our culture. And then they can't go out for their economic reasons. They can't go to the market. They can't work. So it's easier to lie about it, or we think that we're doing ourselves a favor when we lie about it and put more people at risk because we don't want to jeopardize our source of income, our source of joy and pleasure, our community, our socialization, our economic standards, and things like that. So it's a really difficult place to be in as a community. But I think that it's also imperative on us to think about the bigger picture. We're in a problem where we're dealing with this collective issue. And what it's doing is it's bringing to light how we manage problems and how we deal with stressful times. It's different when you have an individual problem and it's just you alone. But when it's a problem that you're dealing with collectively with the rest of the world, it's hard because we handle things differently. But I think we should look at it as in, if I as an individual don't take responsibility and stop the spread within my immediate circle, it's not going to stop. And if I choose to ignore it, ignoring it does not stop the reality of what's happening. So maybe instead of that, I should take some time to educate myself a little bit more as to what this really is, how it's transmitted, how severe it can get, and what to do if I'm in the presence of someone that has the virus, or what to do when I begin to feel symptoms associated with the virus, and take the necessary precaution. Because one of the things we're seeing is, for example, in our country, we don't have enough ventilators or enough oxygen delivery systems to take care of what we have currently, to where if we see what we've seen in the United States happen in Cameroon, it will be devastating. Yeah. I remember working in Cameroon, I think it was 2016, and we ran out of oxygen tubing at one of the facilities I was working at. Wow. We did not have enough concentrators to supply oxygen for people dealing with just simple pneumonia or what we call community-acquired pneumonia, and even just like lung cancer. So we had patients, we had to create a tree-like system to deliver. I'm talking about low flow oxygen, like, simple nasal cannula to supply oxygen to our patients on the wards. And these patients were all in one ward, and we ran out of tubing. So when I think about that scenario and I compare what I'm dealing with here, where I have patients, I get into work on a given day and I have multiple patients either in the ICU on a ventilator or some of them on higher flow oxygen delivery systems, which is not a ventilator, but offers a lot of oxygen than what you would normally get with a simple cannula. And I think about, if we get affected to this same proportion in Cameroon, we'll be screwed because we do not have the infrastructure enough to care for all the people who need that amount of oxygen at the same time. So the best thing we can do is prevention. Just like we've dealt with cholera outbreaks in the past. Remember, people went out on sensitization campaigns, wash your hands, do this, drink clean water, boil your water. Those things have become ingrained in our society now. You don't tell anyone in Cameroon to boil their water. Well, we still do, but most people know to do that. Mm-hmm. Most people know to wash their hands. Most people know to use a filter.
Yeah,
that was because yes, exactly. You remember that? I remember that. I remember putting water in the filter every single day and cleaning out the sediment before we drank it, because we all lived in a almost post-cholera epidemic society we grew up after our country has seen multiple epidemics of cholera. And so I never had cholera. You never had cholera. I don't know. I assume because at the time we were being raised, our parents had been indoctrinated and had seen the devastating effects of cholera. And so we need to exercise that same level of prevention with this virus before it ravages us. And then we're living in a post-COVID society where we've lost a lot of people, right? Same thing with malaria. Nobody tells you to sleep under a mosquito net nowadays. Everybody has a mosquito net. People seek to sleep under one. We close our windows at night. We put the filters and the things on our windows to keep the mosquitoes out. When there's a pond of water in the community, everybody tries to make sure that pond is taken care of so you don't have like the larvae for the mosquitoes growing in them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that we grew up just knowing to do because we were taught in school. Do we want to wait until it's 10 years from today and then we're trying to live in a post-COVID world and doing prevention later on when we could be actively doing it right now and stopping the spread in our communities?
I hear you, and I hear you loud and clear. I want us to just kind of touch up on the examples, because you know how we live. We like to go to meetings, jagis, cradai, people go to funeral. It's an activity,
Mm-hmm.
In Cameroon right now, I mean, I live in Texas, and in Texas, almost everything is open, okay? Our gyms are open, our restaurants are open, unlike in Europe where everything else is closed. We're still open here. And I guess Cameroon is the same. But the difference is, just like you said, the infrastructure, we don't have those means. We don't have the capacity. If the US is struggling and you don't even have half of what they have, how do you plan on coping? The other thing as well that I would like you to maybe help us clarify is this self-medication thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. You have those old wife tales, okay? When you cough, honey, ginger, lemon. Hoo-hoo. Great. I'm a big person in that, and I do that for my kids, all right?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. We're not going to spit on all our little secrets.
Right.
I can't help to wonder, as somebody who is educated today, ask myself, if we had medication, as people claim, that they have found stuff, right, that can cure you, why are people still dying from it? If we have a lot of people told me about steaming therapy. I'm going to be very honest with you. I had COVID. We got it the least expected way. I got it literally among my siblings. Being among the people you would think you cannot get it from.
Yeah.
I did not go party. I did not go anything. I spent a whole year in the house with my children to get them out of school. Everybody was working from home. We did not do anything. But that's how I got it. One meeting with my family and I got it. So it shows to you that, technically we cannot really predict it. We can only do our best. That's my understanding of it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And as a Christian, there's this sentence that keeps coming back as well. Faith over fear. Because COVID brings a lot of fear. When you start living like secluded, you start losing on a lot, and it's not healthy as well. So as you said, I go for education. I educated myself, and because I had it too, trust me, I had it, but I don't want to have it again. Okay? It didn't take me to the hospital, but I can tell you it was not funny, and I just didn't like it. So I don't want to have it again.
I understand you.
The kids are back in school. I resume my activities, but at the same time, I am still keeping my distance. I don't still go to parties. And my friend will laugh at me. They laughed at me when they heard I had it because I was like, oh, I'm not staying. I don't want to stay at this party. I'm going home. I don't mingle. And then I'm the one who had it. They didn't have it. So they were like, oh, Liz. I'm like, yeah, but I still don't regret. I don't. And I did not tell my kids they had it, which would be bad for me. But because I wanted them to keep the mind of the warrior, to remember that we are still in a pandemic. I don't want them to feel like we had COVID. COVID did nothing to us, we fine, and start, removing their mask and all that. No, they're children. They don't know better. So I just wanted to remember, hey, COVID is still out there, okay? And they can read. So they see, they know COVID kills, and I didn't want them to panic as well because they could be feeling symptoms that are in their head.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my daughter is one of those. She'll be reading. I think I have this. I think I have that. So it was our call, and we decided that it's best for them, especially since they were not sick. They just carried it, but they didn't have any symptom. That's how we handled it. People can do it differently. But I just want you to tell them, as a doctor that is living here in a society where we have places that are open, we have this, we have that, how they can go about their days if they don't want to stay and lock themselves in the house, which is understandable because you need to feed. We don't have the support, the economical support system that some people will have here, which is understandable. But what should they do? From one of their sister telling them because she's on the ground, if they
Yeah.
don't believe the government, if they don't believe XYZ, please help us tell them. I don't know if they'll believe you, but I just feel like it's always better to say so. At least
Yes.
it was not said.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm thankful that you and your family did okay.
Thank you.
My father also had severe COVID, and he caught it in Njangi. And there were several people also at that same meeting, and some who did not make it. And so, I know the burden. I guess I know what it feels like to be in the midst of dealing with a loved one that has severe COVID. And that's one of the reasons why it almost is very personal to me, because I deal with it on the work side and I've dealt with it on a personal side, and I've just seen numerous families in such agony when they lose a loved one to this disease. And I'll speak on some of the things that you mentioned. So the first thing, we do not have a cure for this virus. There is no known cure for the virus. The second thing we know is that there are certain risk factors that are associated with worse outcomes. Advanced age, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, and anyone that has what we call immunocompromising condition. So a condition that makes your immune system weaker. So that is sometimes people that are taking certain medications, people that already have or are on treatment for the HIV virus, people that have certain autoimmune conditions that that the immune system is already fighting against its own cells. Those people are higher risk for severe disease if they come in contact with it. So that being said, there are a lot of us that don't carry any of those risk factors, and we probably could live with less fear, right? Because every time there's a new disease that comes to our knowledge, it's a normal part of our fire and flight response to get afraid at first or stunned. But it's also part of our human ability to engage, what we call our prefrontal cortex in your brain, to rationalize and think through this response and stop it from escalating into fear and anxiety and all the downward spiral that comes with that. Now, naturally, as humans, we have the desire to be in the presence of one another, to have community. It's a natural instinct to want to live with others, hugging, touching, kissing, being in close proximity, enjoying the presence of other humans is a gift, and it's something that comes to us naturally. And so when you have a disease that threatens that, it can affect your mental health, and it will affect your mental health. But I think that it is important to remember that there are ways to maintain community, even with safety, virtually like this, for one. Second, with those in your immediate household and those that are part of your family. And then maybe also taking the time out to seek help and to seek, counseling if available to you, and other coping mechanisms that really don't evolve around denial of the presence of the problem. That's what I'll say to that. And then the third thing to touch on, which you wanted me to speak on, was the natural remedies. Now, natural remedies, like you said, I grew up when I was sick, sometimes like with a cold, your grandmother will make you like fever grass, and boil it um, have you drink the tea from it, from the leaves, and you feel better.
The best.
Yeah, yeah. So, there are things that they're naturopathic remedies to certain ailments, which work. But then again, when you talk about a new virus, I opened up by saying there's not a cure for it. So there's no way, like, we don't know a cure yet. What we have right now is options for treatment. Scientifically, the only things that I know that have shown some use or utility in COVID are the following. One, high dose steroids in the situation of someone with severe COVID, so someone that's requiring oxygen or is on ventilator. We have seen that steroids reduces the likelihood of dying from the virus. But it should be done in a controlled environment. Obviously, I'm not telling somebody to go take steroids right now. That's not what I said. It has to be prescribed in a controlled environment because the dosages matter. Your comorbidities, meaning the other conditions that you have, matter because steroids also have side effects. And so that is one. Second, oxygen, as we mentioned before, is a game changer because what's happening in severe COVID is your lungs are sick. And when your lungs are sick, they cannot extract all the oxygen that they normally do from room air, and process it in your system because there's not enough lung that's functioning properly to give you what your body requires when it comes to oxygen. So providing oxygen artificially through a tube, or what we call a nasal cannula, that little prong that goes around your nose, helps your body compensate until your lungs can recover. A lot of what we're seeing in COVID that is really bad is the body's response to the virus. So what makes COVID severe is what we call the pneumonia part, right? Which is the lung illness. And that lung illness, if you think about it, what's happening? The virus comes into the upper respiratory tract, so your nose, it goes into your back of your throat. In some people, it could stay right here. It could stay from the neck upward and you just have mild symptoms. So you just have the upper respiratory illnesses, the congestion, runny nose, cough, lack of smell, and things like that. It gets bad when it goes to the lower respiratory tract. So when it goes to the lower respiratory tract, you're talking about your main airway and into your upper airway and then your small airways, so that your main lungs. When it gets to the lungs is when people have trouble with maintaining their oxygen. And if the body doesn't clear that virus out in that time, that is when it escalates and becomes really severe. And you go into, while your body is trying to create the enzymes and the proteins to mobilize that virus and clear it out, your lungs can begin to sip out fluid into them. And that causes a severe condition, which is what you call the severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS-CoV-2 disease. And that is what is the primary cause of mortality, because that's when the lungs do not recover from that and the person becomes sick, and then they may have complications associated with that, and eventually death occurs. So if you think about that, some of the respiratory treatments that we do will not help that deep lung disease. Some of the upper respiratory treatments that we do can help with congestion because it helps clear up your sinuses. It helps you to expectorate, like to cough and clear out your airway. And the steaming therapies, the teas and such, they only help with soothing your respiratory tract. They help with clearance of secretions. They help with decongestion. So they are natural decongestants. But once you get lower respiratory tract disease, in my opinion, those natural therapies do not help with that. And they do not help with improving the oxygen delivery to your lungs, because that becomes a primary problem. They do not help with reducing that inflammation that the virus has caused in your lungs, because that's the primary problem. And so when I think of natural therapy, I don't like to dismiss it with a blanket statement. I like us to understand where it has a role and where it doesn't have a role. because you cannot fix a problem by putting a band-aid on it. You need to understand the root cause of the problem, and then you go into the root cause and you start to fix the problem from the root upward, as opposed to just fixing the problem from the branches. So once you get into lower respiratory disease, here and down, pneumonias and the rest of that, your steaming is not going to work because your steaming is not doing anything for the root cause in your lungs. You don't need a decongestant because that's here. That's not gonna, help down here, right?
It's no longer there.
The problem is no longer up here. The problem is down here. And so once you get pneumonia, you should be evaluated by a doctor. You should be checking your oxygen. And everybody who has COVID, even if you're at home, invest in the little pulse oximeter, that little device, so you can know what your oxygen level is reading on your finger. Yeah. So, once it gets to a critical level, 90 and under, you seek help. You get help. Because at that point, you're dealing with no longer a simple upper respiratory problem. Your lungs are not getting enough oxygen. And a lot of people are dying because of the lack of oxygen in the body. Really, that's the rudimentary reason why people are dying. And then obviously there are complications that come with having a virus and then getting a second infection and a third infection, or having other organs fail and such. But I think that it's important for us to remember we should always fix a problem by understanding the root cause, and our solutions with natural therapy do not always address the root cause.
Thank you so much, because even me, I learned a lot today, because
I'm glad.
It's like this steaming therapy, I know it has virtue, but I never understood, exactly how it works, like the decongestion, how it goes up here, it works here, not here.
Yeah.
It's a different ball game when you get to here. So people need to understand that, and it makes sense. And again, it brings us back to education. Seek the answers to your problem. Don't just do it. So how do you deal with failure or hardship? What's your secret? Because I'm sure you have had what you said to us in the beginning. So what's your secret to keep going? Is that prayer? Is it
so I am very happy and proud to share that I am a believing Christian, and my life evolves around my faith. I try, like all of us, you try. You can never live a 100% perfect life, but you try. And one of the ways that I do that is prayer. Like, I honestly think prayer is the best therapy. Again, it's like talking to God and listening back for God to give you some insight and revelation as to how to manage your problems. So I rely a lot on my faith, on scripture. I do allow myself to be exposed to literature that aligns with my values. So not only biblical, but from other Christian sources as well. And because of that, I believe that my faith has really been grounded to the point where when I'm faced with trials or problems, I can now look at them as an opportunity for growth as opposed to just a problem. Because here's the thing, when you encounter failure or rejection or a problem, the minute your brain goes into fire and flight mode, there's no rationality anymore, because fire and flight mode is a normal response to a problem. Like, your body is supposed to get to that point where it's like, oh my God, something bad is happening. Oh my God, something bad is happening. Because it makes you protect yourself in that scenario. But what we end up doing is we end there. And all we end up doing is live in this mode of survival every day, there and after, as opposed to engaging our subconscious mind at that point to say, okay, yes, there was danger. Something bad happened, but that threat is not there forever. Now it's time for me to step back from my emotional brain and come up with my rational brain and say, how do I move forward? How do I find an alternative path? How do I learn from what just happened and make something else happen based off of what has happened? So that part takes our conscious reality. It takes us being involved, and there's a more neuroscience circuit around how you redirect your emotions and your thought patterns and such. But I think that it's important to remember that problems happen and they will always happen. Life is not a bed of roses. In the future, there will be problems. Today, there are problems. Tomorrow, there will be problems. Yesterday, there were problems. When you live in that consciousness, when something bad happens, you get stunned at first. Your body goes into fight or flight. You try to protect yourself, but then you quickly recenter yourself to say, oh, okay, here is a problem. Here's what has already happened. What are some things I can learn from that so that when I see this problem again, I can handle it differently. And then the next time when I see a problem, I'm less stunned because I'm like, okay, well, it's back. What did we do last time that worked? How do we implement what we did last time to make this time better? And so on and so forth. And that's really how I cope with problems and failure is I'm just like, okay, what's the opportunity here? You know, when I failed an exam in school, it was woe is me at first. And then after a while, I'm like, wait, the reason I failed this thing is because I didn't know something. So what's the opportunity here? What discipline am I weakest in? And then I go back, I'm like, Nina, you're actually weak in pharmacology. Okay, that means get a pharmacology textbook, spend an hour a day reading about this, studying about this, go to the resource that helps you with that. Or when I encounter financial problems, like, oh man, I'm short on money. But I could be short on money then, or I could just sit there and be like, oh, well, woe is me, screwed, my career will never come to pass. I'll never finish through paying all these student loans or whatever else that I'm dealing with, or, you know, I wouldn't be able to finish school or whatever else. Or I realize, okay, I'm short. What can I do next? Who can I ask for help? How can I secure help? How can I get funding? And so on and so forth. When you begin to ask, what is the opportunity here? What is a way out? Then the solutions, you can start to create the solutions. But if you're only focused on the problem, you can never become solutions focused.
Yeah.
So it's important to recognize that initial fear is you becoming aware of the problem. But you should not dwell and stay there. You should activate your subconscious to realize that is the problem. And then you ask yourself, what is the opportunity here? What can I do from here on out to move forward? When you begin to ask those questions, the answers will come.
So basically to move from realization to action.
Yes.
Because you acknowledge, you realize, oh, I got a problem. And then you're like, okay, noted, I got a problem. You know, who wants to live with a problem, right? So yeah, I don't like living with problems. So
no.
Hey, move on. Next thing, what do I do to get out of this problem and move on with my life?
Yeah.
Thinking about your young self, you pick student, college, high school, whatever. What do you know now that you wish you knew then? And
oh my God.
Growing up in Cameroon, is there something that you learned that served you till today to become who you are?
A lot, Liz. A lot.
Oh
man. Yeah, I have written books, Liz.
Really?
Yes, I have. I've co-authored 3 books.
Read one of them. But I
yes,
need you, because co-author, I don't know, would it be about you and the journey or what?
So I think the one that pertains most to what we're talking about is the book Beyond Challenges, which is survival stories of female African physicians on love, life, and relationships. And I was a lead on that one. And we each wrote chapters regarding just challenges and how we overcame them. And I think that aligns very well with this. I'll send you the link if you want to share it with your audience.
Down here while we talk.
Yeah. It's drninalum.com/shop or drlumshop.com. Okay. And so I to that effect, and then I also did the Chronicles of Women in White Coats, which was talking about chronicling our medical journeys and trials. And then the last one, which I was actually the lead author on with Dr. Brown, was for IMGs. So it's a book on how to help IMGs become more competitive in their career pursuits in the States. But looking back at myself and my younger days, man, Liz, like there's so many things that I wish I did differently. I don't even know which one to start with. I wish I wasn't a worrier as much as I was, like just worrying all the time, because it did not help me achieve anything. It just made me more anxious and crippled me. I wish I took more action. I wish I relied less on motivation and feeling and just doing. I wish I was just a doer. And a lot of people may disagree and say, well, you're a doer because you did, right? And here you are. But it took a lot of trial and failure. Like I wish I did less reps. When you go to the gym, you have to do so many reps to get your muscles strong.
Yeah.
Well, some people may only have to do like a few. I wish I did too many to get my muscles strong. So I wish I did less reps, because there's a way to learn. You can learn by personal experience, or you can learn from other people's experiences. And the easiest way to learn from other people's experiences, because you don't have to do any work. You just take their lessons, you run with it, and then you make your life better. You suffer less that way, right? But sometimes we learn lessons by going over the same mountain 100 times, and then we learn and we're like, man, I could have just gone around this thing one time. So I wish I took action quicker. And that's really the big thing I want people that are listening to today is, the right thing to do. You just need to start doing it. Okay, want to lose weight? The right thing to do. You know what you need to cut out. You know what you need to start doing. You need to start walking around the block. You want to take charge of your health. You know what you need to do. You need to call that doctor and get an appointment. You check your blood pressure. You need to do those basic things. Okay, you want to go back to school? Start looking for school. Get on the internet. Start reading, finding schools in your area. You want to have a kid? Start figuring out what you need to be doing. Like, okay, maybe why am I not having a kid? Like, what's going on here? Do I need to see a fertility doctor? Do I need to see about my health, like what I'm doing incorrectly? You want to get married. Well, you need to start socializing on the internet, get on a dating app, whatever you need to do.
Whatever you need to do, yeah.
Yeah, you want to, make a lot of money. Well, beyond my 9 to 5, what are some of the talents that I have? How can I monetize those? How can I begin to look at my gifts and talents? Oh, am I a good cook? Can I start cooking? Or am I a good artsy person? Can I start creating my craft and sharing with people? I want to write a book. Start typing on a Word document. I want to, be a better parent to my kids. Well, start talking to your kids. Start being present with them. Start doing things with them. Just listen to them. Just be in their presence more. Cut off time that you spend doing X, Y, Z and spend that with your kids. So whatever the things that we want to do, the answers are right in front of us. We just have to start doing it. I think a lot of times we know what we need to do. It's just we want motivation. You want somebody to push you. Just start doing. Just take action.
Somebody else's responsibility.
Yes. Right. You want more gifts? Buy yourself the gifts. You know what I mean? Like, take action. Just do. You want more love in your life? Love yourself more and start loving other people more, and more love would come to you. And so just take action.
Yeah. Actually, very good advice. I'm taking it too. So next week we have March 8th, which is our International Women's Day. Before we close, what do you want women to take? Our women especially, speak to our Cameroonian ladies. What would be your message to them? I know we have a new fabric. That's a fact.
Yeah. So when I was young, right, this is how I grew up, and it's a little bit jaded, but my mom, she used to, not that she hated Women's Day, because when I think back, she was the epitome of a strong woman, and is the epitome. She was practicing in the 80s in Cameroon and 90s, and even up until now as a woman, as a leader. And I would think she would be the one that's excited to wear the fabric every year and march down the road and hail. But my mom hated Women's Day in Cameroon because she thought it was just a scam for women to buy fabric. And she felt like women could be doing more than walking down the street and chanting and drinking and getting drunk and dancing in the roads. And then on March 9th, we're back to square one. Some of them were getting beaten by their husbands. Some of them were back to, not doing anything with themselves or taking care of their families the way that they should, or not pursuing their career goals and the things that they need to be doing with their lives. But we're first to celebrate and have drinks bought for them. So I feel like the concept of Women's Day became very perverse in the way that I grew up. Now, this is not for everybody, right? Other people have different perspectives. I respect that. But this is what I grew up thinking about Women's Day. But that's because I grew up with a strong woman in the house. Mm-hmm. So I had that example to see, and it was almost funny that her perspective of Women's Day wasn't the same as maybe some of the women in our community, because my mom never bought the fabric. She never went out to march. You never see her drinking out au Fête de la Femme or whatever. She went to work. Mm-hmm. She helped the people. She came back. She put us food on our plates to eat. We had a roof over our head. We had a place to sleep. Life was good. And the fact that we didn't celebrate did not make it any less of a day that empowers and celebrates the woman or the girl child. But we celebrated it in a different way, in the way that we saw what it was like to be a multifaceted woman and have a career and have a family and support your family and be a woman and be feminine in your style and the things that you do and not lose yourself, right? So because of that, I am a little bit the same now in the sense that I celebrate women. I support women. I love women. I want to see more women winning and hitting it big, going for the things that they think they could never achieve, or the things that they were told to never go for. Or, like you said before, some women love medicine but don't want to be a doctor because it takes too long, right? And those types of things. And I'd love to see more women doing things that have been considered difficult for them to do. But I think that it would be a disservice if every Women's Day comes around and all we focus on is a celebration and fabric and food and drink. And yet in the workplace, we, the women, are not creating opportunities for other young women behind us. I think Women's Day is best celebrated when each person listening does something good for the woman next to her. I think Women's Day is best celebrated when each woman listening doesn't slander and gossip about the next woman and all the wrong choices that she has made, but instead helps that woman make better choices if they think that they know better, right? Mm-hmm. I think Women's Day is best celebrated when I look at my life and my career and I meet another young woman who wants to be a doctor, and I don't only tell her, oh, you can be a doctor, but I actually give her an opportunity that aligns her, that puts her right in line to becoming a doctor. I open a door for her. I give her a recommendation. I help her with her exams. I help her take the next step in her career.
I'll just give her the way to go,
Yes, I give her the way to go, right? Or I mentor her or whatever. Mm-hmm. That to me is a celebration of Women's Day. I think that the day that I hear another woman talking about another woman negatively in my presence, and I stand up for that woman and I say, you don't address this woman like that. And if you have something to say it to her face. That day I'm celebrating a woman. The day that you call me up and say, come do this talk with me. And I say, you know what? I could be doing 100 other things for 2 hours, but I come and I sit with you and I talk with you and I give you my time. I am respecting the woman. I am celebrating the woman because I want other women to do more and to do better. That to me is more important than the fabric, than the food, than the day, because it's just one day, right? It's just one day in the grand scheme of things. What am I doing to help women in real life? To me, that's what matters more.
I hear you, and I hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry we took quite a bit of your time, but you had so much to say. And you did actually say a whole lot. I'm so appreciative that you took time to come and do it. I was even worried that your pager, on TV, you always have pagers. So I was like, oh, I hope it doesn't ring, or, oh, I hope she doesn't have to go anywhere. But thank you so much. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your work. just keep it up. I don't know how you cope to balance your work and your page. Where do you find time?
I don't know, Liz. I find time in my sleep.
I'm in awe because just doing this
Yes.
consistent thing that I'm doing, it brought me to a different level of respect for even the women that are bloggers, because
Yeah.
a lot of people tend to undermine things other people do, but sometimes you need to be in their shoe and you realize the work that is behind posting all that content, doing the search, doing this. You even created a calendar for IMG as a roadmap. Girl, please take a minute and just tap yourself in the back for all of us.
Thank God. Thank God. I think purpose, like if you're walking in your purpose, God always just aligns you and he gives you the wisdom to create those things, right? Like the content, the messaging, the packaging and all that. Like I really think it's just God given, because some days I ask myself, like, you have a full-time job, Nina. You have a full-time job and you have so many responsibilities at your full-time job. How?
I was just like, I asked myself the question so many times, but I think now I'm getting it. Like I don't know. Don't ask me how or why. I'm just saying, like, I feel like I'm getting it.
Yeah.
And I just have one word in my head. It's just saying, thank you. And please don't give up. Please keep it up, because I feel like somewhere, somehow, you're helping more people than you even know. So if you are listening and you don't follow her, please follow her. Get in touch with her.
So let me share my information for anyone that wants to keep in contact with me. I'm actually very receptive. I get emails all the time, especially from young men and women, men too, who are international medical students or graduates or have a similar pathway or are looking to pursue this pathway. So my website is DRNINALUM. So Nina Lum. So my first name, last name, and then DR at the front. So drninalum.com. And if you go to my website, you'll find out everything about me. So you'll find out how you can send me an email. It's on the contact page. You'll find out how to listen to my podcast, the IMG Roadmap podcast, where I interview other successful international students that have become doctors in the States, and they share their own stories, because sometimes my perspective is skewed and one-sided. And then you'll also learn about my blog, where I blog about different things related to being an international doctor and such, and also tips for IMGs. You'll also find my shop where you can buy any of my books if you're interested. And if you just want to learn about them and share with your friends, I really appreciate that as well. And I think you can also, what's on there? You can also download some of my free resources on there. I have webinars, I have ebooks that you can download from my website as well. I'm also on Instagram at the same, DRNINALUM, so Dr. Nina Lum. I am on Facebook at Nina Lum MD. You can find my page on there. I have a Twitter page. I seldom use it, but I'll get onto it someday. But Instagram, my website, those are two places where if you want to talk to me, you can find me. I respond to DMs and emails and such.
And I can confirm that she does. She responds to all those things. I'm the living proof. So thank you so much, Dr. Nina Lum. We wish you a lovely day, and please stay blessed. Keep doing what you're doing and have a great week.
Thank you.
Bye.